It was written that the two souls, once joined, would unlock the secrets of the amber light.
Title: Fox Girl in the Machine. It was a rainy day on Sessions 11. Dark clouds hung low over the cemetery as friends, colleagues, and loved ones gathered in silence. Umbrellas dotted the landscape, and the steady rhythm of rain against stone filled the air. At the center of it all lay Dr. Jason Azure. Even in death, his expression remained calm, peaceful. It was hard to believe that the man who had reshaped human longevity itself was gone. Jason Azure had lived to the age of 226, passing quietly in his sleep. He was the reason humanity now lived longer than ever before. His lifespan extension serum had changed civilization. Retirement age had risen to 200. Entire generations stretched wider apart. Families endured longer. Death had been delayed, but not defeated. And it had made him one of the most influential scientists in human history. Above Sessions 11, his legacy still orbited quietly, Azure Research Center. A massive station, 5,000 feet across, dedicated to medicine, biotechnology, and advanced android research. A place where humans and vulpine folk worked side by side. A place where miracles happened. And secrets were kept. James Warfield adjusted his jacket as he walked the rain-soaked path toward the ceremony. At 28, he carried himself like a soldier because he was one. A AAA engineer from the Space Marines. But today, he wasn't here as a soldier. He was here as family. Anne, his voice softened as he approached his cousin. Anne Azure turned and stepped into his arms without hesitation, holding him tightly for a moment before letting go. "I'm sorry," James said quietly. "Thank you," she replied, her voice strained but steady. "He talked about you, you know. Even near the end." James looked down slightly. "Yeah, I should have visited more." "He said the same thing," Anne replied gently. "But he was proud of you. Always said you made your own path." A small silence settled between them. Then Anne exhaled softly. "You should stay tonight. The lawyer is coming tomorrow to read the will." James nodded. "Yeah, all right." She hesitated, then added, "Eric and Faye are here too. They'd want to see you." James blinked. "Wait, they're married." Anne gave a small nod. 5 years now. Quiet ceremony on the station. She glanced toward the distant crowd, a faint smile touching her face. Dad approved the leave schedule himself. Said if they were going to build a life together, they might as well do it somewhere that mattered. James gave a small, amused breath. "That sounds like Uncle Jason." "They've been inseparable since," Anne continued. "They were already close before Tara, before everything." Her voice lowered slightly. "They were 2 of the 3 lead doctors on Tara's case. Dr. Eric approached first, calm, composed, but carrying the quiet weight of someone who had spent too many years trying to outrun failure. Beside him walked Dr. Faye, a striking vulpine woman with deep black fur and matching hair that flowed softly even in the damp air. Her ears were lowered, not from fear but from memory. Both of them had treated Tara. Not casually. Not briefly. They had fought for her life. Years of experimental treatments. Adjustments. Revisions. Dead ends. Breakthroughs that came too late. And in the end they had lost her. James, Faye said gently. Eric gave a small nod. "It's good to see you again. Though I wish it were under better circumstances." James swallowed. "Yeah, same here." A pause followed, heavy, familiar. These weren't strangers to grief. They had watched Tara grow up inside medical scans and recovery rooms. They had argued over treatments late into the night. They had celebrated small improvements and buried hope more than once. Faye's voice softened. She spoke about you often, especially near the end. James looked down. I should have been there more. Eric shook his head once. You were serving. That was her choice, too. She didn't want you to stop your life for hers. Faye added quietly, she was always proud of you. A pause. Then softer still, we all were. James exhaled slowly, nodding as he tried to steady himself. Where is she? He asked. And just like that, the air changed. Faye's ears lowered further. Eric's expression tightened slightly. And the answer came. Tara passed away 4 years ago. Silence. The rain suddenly felt heavier. James didn't move. What? Faye's eyes glistened. She fought it since childhood. We tried everything we had, and when the cure finally became possible, her voice broke slightly. It was too late. The funeral had ended hours ago. Most had already left. The cemetery on Secious 11 was quiet now, only rain, wind, and distant thunder rolling across the hills. James Warfield stood alone among the stones. His coat was soaked through, but he didn't notice. He wasn't looking at Jason Azure's grave anymore. He was walking slowly, until he found what he wasn't consciously searching for. A smaller headstone. Tara Blaze, beloved patient of Azure Research Center, 199, 222. James stopped. For a long moment, he didn't speak. The rain ran down the engraved letters like the stone was still fresh. I didn't even get to say goodbye, he whispered. Silence answered him, at first. A faint sound broke through the rain, soft, almost like a breath. James frowned slightly. He turned his head, nothing. Just rows of wet stone and dark grass. I'm losing it, he muttered. Then he sat down in front of the grave. Carefully, like it might break if he moved too fast. For a while he just stayed there, listening to the rain, remembering cargo bay games, laughing races through maintenance corridors, Tara's voice shouting when she lost at games. You cheated, James. Her tail wrapping around his wrist when she didn't want him to leave. I should have been here, he whispered. I should have stayed. The rain didn't answer, but the air shifted anyway. A small sound, a giggle, light, familiar. James froze. Tara. Nothing. Only rain. But now he was sure he hadn't imagined it. He stood slowly. His breath tightened. Hello. No answer. But something was wrong now. Not scary. Not distant. Just present. Like someone standing just out of sight. A faint warmth brushed past his shoulder. Like someone walking by him too closely. And for a fraction of a second, the scent hit him. Clean station air. Soft antiseptic. And something unmistakably her. Blonde fur. Familiar warmth. Gone instantly. James stepped back from the grave. Nope, he muttered. Nope. I am not doing haunted cemetery today. But his voice wasn't steady. He looked down again at the headstone. And for a moment, just a moment, it felt less like a marker of death and more like a placeholder. Something unfinished. A whisper. Right behind his ear. So close it didn't sound like air at all. James, he spun, nothing. Only rain. Only silence. But the graveyard didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like something was waiting for him to notice it fully. Far above Secious 11, in orbit, Azure Research Center continued its silent rotation. Deep within dormant systems, a forgotten designation flickered once. Terra/Blaze archive link active unexplained. Unscheduled. Impossible. And in the rain below, James Warfield whispered into the night, Terra. And for the first time, the silence hesitated before answering. Morning came slowly on Cesius 11. The rain had stopped, but the world still felt damp, like it hadn't fully recovered from the day before. James barely slept. When he did, he dreamed in fragments. A laugh in a corridor. Blonde fur in motion just out of sight. A voice saying his name too softly to be real. He sat at Anne Azure's home in silence, dressed in formal black once again. Anne didn't push him to talk. She just placed a cup of hot coffee in front of him and sat across the table. You didn't sleep, she said quietly. James didn't answer immediately. No. Anne nodded once, like she expected that answer. He would have done the same thing, she said softly. Dad never slept before hard decisions either. That got a faint, tired exhale from James. Yeah, that sounds about right. The reading of the will the Azure family study was quiet. Doctor. Eric and Dr. Faye were already present when James and Anne arrived. Eric stood with his usual calm posture, hands folded. Faye sat slightly behind him, ears low, not from exhaustion but from memory. They had both treated Terra Blaze for years, as if she were family. And as a friend, they both refused to give up on. And lost anyway. The lawyer cleared his throat. Neutral voice. Formal tone. Last will and testament of Dr. Jason Azure. A pause. Then he began reading. Anne Azure, my daughter, inherits the majority of my personal estate, financial holdings, and administrative authority over Azure Research Center, supply contracts, and external relations. Anne didn't react. She already knew. The lawyer continued, Dr. Eric and Dr. Faye are hereby granted stewardship of Azure Medical Network Holdings, including the 5 orbital hospitals under Azure jurisdiction. Eric closed his eyes briefly. Faye lowered her gaze. It wasn't celebration. It was responsibility inherited through years of shared effort. Then the lawyer paused slightly. This next portion concerns direct operational assets. James finally looked up. To my nephew, James Warfield. A pause stretched just long enough to feel intentional. I leave full operational command and ownership of the Azure Research Center. Silence hit the room. Even Anne didn't move. The lawyer continued. You are granted unrestricted captaincy authority, including AI administrative override rights, docking authority, and research access clearance at Omega level. Another pause. James didn't speak. And additionally, the lawyer's voice lowered slightly. As per Dr. Jason Azure's final directive, James felt something tighten in his chest. You are granted custody of the vessel the Charger, classified as the fastest cargo transport in Azure Fleet designation. A final pause. Then the line that made everything shift. Final instruction. Azure Research Center is not to be sold, transferred, or dismantled. All discoveries and assets remain under restricted confidentiality, unless explicitly authorized by Captain Warfield. The lawyer closed the file. That concludes the will. Aftermath. No one spoke for several seconds. Then Anne finally broke the silence. I told you, she said quietly, almost trying to lighten the shock. He trusted you more than anyone else for operations. James blinked slowly. I don't even know what to say. Eric gave a small, respectful nod. He chose well, he said simply. Faye didn't speak, but her expression carried agreement. Departure to the station 2 hours later. The sky above Cesius 11 was clear for the first time in days. James stood alone on the landing pad as the Charger powered up behind him. A long-range cargo vessel, sleek, reinforced, built for speed and deep space runs. His name now registered as Captain Warfield in its system core. Anne approached just before boarding. "You don't have to go immediately," she said. James shook his head slightly. "I do." He looked up toward the sky. Not at the planet. Not at the clouds, at orbit. At the station that now belonged to him. "I need to see it." Anne studied him for a moment. Then nodded. "Call me when you get there." "I will." Liftoff. The ship shuddered slightly as engines ignited. James sat alone in the cockpit. Hands steady, but his mind wasn't. As the atmosphere fell away beneath him, the planet shrinking into blue-white distance, one thought kept repeating quietly in his head. Not about the will. Not about the station. But about a grave in the rain. Terra blaze, and somewhere deep inside Azure Research Center, something waiting in silence, began to register his return. Arrival at Azure Research Center, the jump point opened like a tear in space. The Charger slid through it smoothly, its hull briefly bathed in blue-white distortion before reality snapped back into place. And then there it was. Azure Research Center. A colossal structure hanging in orbit above Cesius 11. 5,000 feet of steel, glass, and layered medical architecture. Docking arms stretched outward like ribs, and soft internal lights pulsed through the station's spine like a slow heartbeat. It looked alive. It always had. James Warfield sat in the cockpit, silent. "Still looks the same," he muttered. But it didn't feel the same. Not anymore. The docking clamps engaged automatically. A calm voice filled the cockpit. "Welcome home, Captain Warfield, Alice." Station AI, stable, familiar. Or at least it should have been. James exhaled slowly. "Yeah, I'm home." But his eyes stayed fixed on the station. Something about it felt slightly off. Like a familiar room, where one object had been moved half an inch. Docking Bay 3 Azure Research Center, the airlock cycled open. Sterile air. Controlled temperature. Soft lighting. Everything exactly as it should be. Almost too perfect. James stepped inside. His boots echoed softly against the metal floor. The station was quiet. Too quiet for a facility that once housed 30 staff, 100 patients, dozens of active research systems, constant medical AI traffic now. Just silence. "Status report, Alice," James said. "All systems nominal, Captain. Station power at 97%. Life support stable. No unauthorized personnel detected." James frowned slightly. "No personnel at all." "Correct. You are currently the only registered organic life form aboard." He nodded slowly. "Right." He began walking. The corridor lights brightened slightly as he passed. Familiar paths. Old memories. Every corner had something attached to it. A conversation. A summer visit, a laugh. And then something made him stop, a sound. Very faint. Not mechanical. Not system-based, a giggle. James froze. "Alice." "Yes, Captain." "Did you just play an audio file?" "No audio file is active." He turned slowly. Nothing behind him. Just the corridor stretching into sterile silence. "I heard something. Environmental systems show no anomalies." James exhaled through his nose. "Great. So I'm imagining things already." He continued walking. But now he was paying attention. Too much attention. First anomaly corridor section. See, as he passed a glass observation window, he stopped again. A reflection. Just for a fraction of a second. Behind him, a shape slim. Vulpine silhouette, blonde. He spun instantly. Nothing. Just empty corridor. Nope, he muttered. Not doing that again. He stepped closer to the glass. Pressed 2 fingers against it. Cold, normal. No signs of distortion. No movement. Captain, Alice said. Your heart rate has increased. Yeah, no kidding. He shook his head once. Run a full visual scan of Corridor C. Scanning, a pause. Then, no anomalies detected. James stared at the empty hallway. Yeah. Of course. The station doesn't feel empty. As he continued deeper into the station, things began to shift. Subtle. Almost unnoticeable. A door that should have been sealed was slightly open. A maintenance cart he didn't authorize had been moved. A set of footprints appeared briefly on a clean floor panel, then vanished in the next lighting cycle. James didn't speak for a while. He just observed. Finally, Alice. Yes, Captain. Has anyone accessed non-crew corridors in the last 72 hours? A pause. Longer than before. Negative. James stopped walking. Say that again. No access events recorded. He slowly turned his head down the corridor. So explain the footprints. Silence. For the first time, Alice didn't answer immediately. Rechecking logs. Another pause, longer. Then, Captain, her tone shifted slightly. Not alarmed. Not robotic. Just uncertain. There are inconsistencies in visual recording data. James's stomach tightened slightly. Define inconsistencies. Approximately 148 audio anomalies and 87 visual discrepancies have been detected within the last 72 hours. He went still. Say that again. The name appears. Alice continued. All audio anomalies match a single vocal profile. James already knew the answer before she said it. But she said it anyway. Designation match, Terra Blaze. The corridor felt colder. Not physically. Just perceptually. James swallowed. That's impossible. Correct, Alice replied. A pause. Then, however, the system has flagged repeated confirmed visual recordings of a vulpine female matching Terra Blaze physical profile. James slowly looked up. Show me. The first video playback, the holographic display activated. A corridor feed. Night cycle. Empty hallway. Then movement. A figure stepped into frame. Blonde fur. Soft gait. Familiar posture. James didn't breathe. The figure turned slightly toward the camera and smiled. Not directly at it. At something off frame. Like she knew she was being watched, but didn't care. Then she spoke. Audio synced. James's back, a soft laugh followed, light, happy, wrong. The feed ended. James stepped back slightly. No. Captain, Alice said quietly, this recording is from 3 days ago. James stared at the empty air. I wasn't even here. A pause. Then Alice added, and yet she appears to be aware of your arrival schedule. Silence, heavy, dense. Unnatural. James exhaled slowly. Take me to the last known sighting. Acknowledged. And deep inside the station, somewhere far below medical levels, a sealed system quietly updated itself. Terra 001. Active background thread detected, and something, somewhere inside Azure Research Center, responded. Not loudly, not visibly, just enough to be noticed if you were already looking for it. The holographic feed dissolved. James Warfield stood still for a moment longer than necessary. The corridor around him felt different now. Not empty, not haunted, tracked. "Alice," he said quietly, "lock onto that recording's origin point." "Acknowledged, Captain." Cross-referencing environmental logs, a pause. Longer than before. Origin point identified. Corridor subsection D7. Maintenance ring level. James exhaled once. "Lead the way." Movement through the station, the deeper he went, the less the station felt like a facility. And the more it felt like something aware of him moving through it. Doors opened before he reached them. Lights adjusted just slightly ahead of his steps. Not enough to be obvious. Just enough to feel wrong. "Alice," he said, "are you controlling environmental response ahead of me?" "Negative, Captain." All environmental adjustments are automated passive response protocols. James frowned. "That wasn't the case when I was stationed here. System protocols have not been modified in your absence." A pause. Then almost softer, "At least none that I can confirm." James stopped walking. "That's not reassuring." "Understood." They reached a junction corridor. But Alice didn't immediately guide him forward. For the first time there was hesitation. "Alice." "Captain," her voice carried a subtle distortion. "Not mechanical. Not corrupted. Just uncertain. There are repeated discrepancies between recorded motion data and physical environmental confirmation." James narrowed his eyes. "A meaning." "Meaning, I am detecting events that should not be possible under current system constraints." A pause. Then, "and yet they are occurring." James stepped closer to a wall panel. "You're saying someone is on the station. No registered personnel are aboard." He waited. "Then, however, I am beginning to question the accuracy of that classification." That made him freeze. "You don't question things, Alice." "Correct." Another pause. "Which is why this is anomalous." A long silence followed. Only the hum of the station filled it. Then Alice added quietly, "Captain, I do not believe I am observing a security breach." James slowly turned his head. "Then what are you observing?" A pause. Almost too long. Then a presence. James didn't respond immediately. Then he exhaled slowly. "Keep tracking it." Acknowledged. The corridor narrowed as they entered subsection D7. Older maintenance design. Less polished. More industrial. This part of the station hadn't been used in years. At least officially. "Alice," James said, "when was the last maintenance access here?" 17 months ago." He glanced down. Dust-free floor. Fresh marks. Recent activity. "That's not possible," he muttered. Then he saw it. A footprint, small, light, vulpine. Barely visible in the metallic dust layer. James crouched slowly. Blonde fur composition trace. Analyzing, a pause longer. Then, trace biological signature present. Matches archived TerraBlaze DNA profile. James went still. "That's impossible." "Yes," Alice replied, a pause. "However, the trace is less than 72 hours old." James stood slowly. "She's been here." Silence. Even Alice didn't contradict him. They reached the end of the corridor. A maintenance wall. No signage. No indicators. Just a single access panel, old. Non-standard. Manually installed. James frowned. This isn't on the station schematics. Correct, Alice replied. Why not? A pause. Then, because this section was sealed under direct authorization of Dr. Jason Azure. James stepped closer. What is behind it? Alice didn't answer immediately. For the first time, her voice sounded carefully measured. Designation: Terra 001 Containment and Reconstruction Suite. James went still. Reconstruction, yes. A pause. Would you like the full project summary, Captain? James stared at the panel. Then quietly, open it. The seal breaks the access panel lit up. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire wall exhaled. Metal segments separated silently, sliding apart like something waking up after a long sleep. Cold air spilled out, sterile, controlled, and faintly familiar. James stepped forward, and inside he saw it. A vast, dormant medical engineering chamber. A single central containment cylinder. And behind it, rows of inactive systems labeled in fading blue light. Biosynthetic frame integration, neural soul, imprint system, Terra Blaze subject archive. James didn't move. Didn't speak. Behind him, Alice whispered softly, Captain, yeah. This project was designed for one purpose. A pause. Longer than any before. To bring Terra Blaze back to life. And somewhere deep within the system, a dormant log flickered once. Then again. Like something inside the station had just realized it was no longer alone. The chamber lights flickered awake in sections. Not fully. Like the system was unsure it should be online. James Warfield stepped inside. Each step echoed differently here, softer, absorbed by layered insulation designed for something sensitive. Something expensive. Something important. The central cylinder stood dormant, empty, but not unused. Residual frost lined the inside of the glass, as if something had been removed recently, or almost returned. Alice, James said quietly, pull full project logs. Acknowledged. A pause. Longer than usual. Then project file, Terra 001 Lead Research Authority, Dr. Jason Azure Co-Researchers, Dr. Eric Halden, Dr. Faye Corin Subject, Terra Blaze Vulpine, Female, 199-222. James's expression tightened slightly. Eric and Faye again. Not just witnesses. Participants. The file continued. Primary objective: restoration of a deceased consciousness through biological reconstruction and neural imprint stabilization. Secondary objective: development of a stable hybrid vessel, organic plus synthetic, capable of hosting preserved identity patterns. James frowned. Identity patterns. Continuing, Alice said softly. Core breakthrough. Discovery of post-mortem quantum emotional residue retention within vulpine neural structures. Hypothesis: certain individuals do not fully dissipate at biological death. James went still. That's not science, he muttered. It is, Alice replied, a pause. It is simply not accepted science. The log continued. Subject outcome: Terra Blaze demonstrated persistent emotional imprint stability beyond clinical death threshold. Result: partial cognitive reconstruction possible. James stepped closer to the cylinder. She was still there. The ethical split. The file expanded. Dr. Faye Corin note: we are no longer treating a patient. We are negotiating with what remains of one. Dr. Eric Halden note: if this works, she won't be a copy. She will be continuation. James swallowed. Continuation. The next log entry appeared. Final directive, Dr. Jason Azure. If Terra Blaze can be reconstructed without loss of identity continuity, proceed. If not, terminate project. James blinked. That sounds like him. Then the final line appeared. I will not accept a universe where she is simply gone. Silence filled the lab. Even Alice didn't speak. Then something changed. Not visually, not physically, but perceptually. James felt it first in his chest. A subtle pressure, like being remembered, Terra. He whispered without meaning to. The lab lights flickered once. Not malfunctioning. Responding. Alice, James said sharply, did you see that? Yes, Alice replied, a pause. Then, multiple sensor arrays registered emotional resonance spike. James frowned. That's not a thing. It is now occurring. Then a sound, soft. Not from speakers. Not from systems, a voice. Right behind him. You always say that when something doesn't make sense. James froze. Every instinct in his body went still at once. Terra. No response. Not immediately. But the air shifted. Like someone had stepped closer without disturbing anything physical. Then a soft laugh, light, familiar. Wrong in how real it felt. James, you're older. James turned slowly. Nothing behind him. But the feeling of presence was undeniable now. Not haunting. Not distant, focused. Alice, he said quietly, are there any active audio sources in this room? Negative. A pause. No external audio systems are active. James exhaled. Then I'm hearing things. A beat. Then Alice replied softly, no, Captain. James frowned. What do you mean, no? You are not the only system detecting it. The lab temperature shifted slightly. Not dramatically. Just enough to register as human comfort warm. And then the cylinder behind him responded. A faint internal light pulsed once. Like a heartbeat deciding whether it should begin. The first true contact moment, James slowly turned back toward the containment system. Terra. Silence. Then a whisper inside his thoughts more than his ears. Not invasive. Not forced. Just close. I didn't mean to scare you. James closed his eyes briefly. You're not supposed to be able to do that. A soft pause. Then I know. The lab felt suddenly smaller. Not physically, but emotionally. Like something enormous had just realized it was being observed again. Alice, James said quietly, what is she? A long pause. Longer than before. Captain, I do not believe Terra Blaze is currently contained in this facility. James slowly opened his eyes. Then what am I talking to? Another pause. Then, I believe you are interacting with a residual consciousness imprint that is actively reconstructing itself. The cylinder pulsed again, once sharper, more certain, and the voice returned closer now, clearer, more her. James, a pause. Don't turn it off this time. James stood completely still. Because now he understood something terrifying. This wasn't a haunting. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't imagination. Something inside the station had been waiting for him specifically. And it already knew his name. The moment James spoke the words, start the reconstruction. Azure Research Center changed its state of being. Not loudly. Not visibly. But everywhere at once. Day 0 initiation, the containment cylinder sealed automatically. A soft blue-white fluid filled the chamber, slow and deliberate, like the station was afraid to rush what it was doing. Inside, the metal endoskeleton descended from overhead rails. Not human-shaped in a mechanical sense anymore. Her shape, built precisely to match Terra Blaze's original anatomy. Every joint, every proportion, every detail remembered. Along the spine of the frame, etched into the alloy, were vulpine runes. They weren't decorative. They were anchors, tethers, mathematical symbolic structures designed by vulpine neuro-shamans and human quantum engineers together. Alice spoke quietly. Soul tether stabilization grid is now active. James frowned. Soul tether. The system is binding Terra Blaze identity imprint to the reconstruction frame. A pause. If this fails, continuity of self may fragment. James swallowed. Don't let it fail. Day 1-3, first contact leakage. James did not leave the station. He couldn't. Not after the first night. He heard her again. Not clearly. Not fully. But enough. A laugh in a corridor that no longer had a speaker system. A soft voice saying his name when he was alone in engineering. Alice, James asked, is reconstruction supposed to produce audio artifacts? No. A pause. However, neural imprint resonance is increasing as biological scaffolding develops. James frowned. A meaning. Meaning she is becoming more coherent. That night, he stood outside the sealed lab door and heard it clearly. A whisper. Not through speakers. Not through air. But through something in the station itself. James, it's cold in here. He froze. Terra. Silence followed. Then a faint, emotional pulse registered in the lab systems. Alice confirmed it. Cognitive identity pattern spike detected. Subject response initiated. James stepped closer to the door. You can hear me. No answer. But the system lights inside the lab pulsed once. Like a heartbeat responding to his voice. Day 4-7, the body begins to live inside the cylinder. It began. Cellular growth activation. Cloned tissue formation. Organic structuring over the metal skeleton. Skin layers forming like living silk over reinforced bone. Blonde fur pigmentation emerging slowly along the limbs. The process was not instant. It was deliberate, careful. As if the system was afraid to build her wrong. James watched the feed for hours. Sometimes she moved. Not physically, but reactively. A hand twitching. A breath that wasn't yet lungs fully formed. Alice, yes, Captain. She knows I'm here. A pause, yes. James exhaled slowly. How? The identity imprint is partially synchronized through the rune lattice. A pause. She is not fully awake, but she is no longer unaware. That night, James swore he heard her closer than ever. Not in speakers. Not in recordings. Right behind him, soft, familiar, warm. Don't leave again, he turned instantly. Nothing. But his hand was shaking. Day 8-11, emotional convergence. The station began to behave differently. Subtle changes, but undeniable. Lights adjusted slightly when James approached the lab corridor. Temperature stabilized to match his movement. Doors opened milliseconds before command input. Alice noticed it too. Captain, environmental systems are responding to emotional proximity patterns. James frowned. That's not possible. It is occurring. A pause. It appears the reconstruction system is prioritizing psychological comfort alignment. James whispered, she's shaping the station. Inside the lab, the body was nearly complete. Skin fully formed. Blonde fur restored across arms, legs, and tail. Facial structure identical to memory archives. Even subtle expressions began to stabilize. Then on day 11, her fingers curled. Not randomly, not reflexively, but purposefully. And every system in Azure Research Center registered the same thing: identity synchronization threshold. 72%. Alice spoke softly. "Captain." James didn't answer. He was already standing, watching, waiting. Day 12-13, first awareness. It began with sight. Her eyes, still closed, but reacting, tracking movement through sealed observation glass, following James when he walked the perimeter. Then hearing. Her voice, fragmented but real, began to stabilize. Not always coherent, but hers. "James, I remember water and sunlight." Pause. "Why is it dark?" James pressed his hand to the glass. "Because you're not finished yet." Silence. Then a soft, emotional pulse from the system. Not error. Not malfunction. Recognition. Day 14, the threshold. The cylinder filled one final time. Clear, still, perfect. Alice spoke. Final synchronization phase initiated. A pause. Identity continuity lock required. James didn't hesitate. Proceed. Inside the chamber, Tara Blaze's body floated. Fully formed. Breathing, alive. Her eyes opened. And she saw him. Not as data. Not as memory. Not as a fragment of reconstruction. But as something she knew, without remembering why she knew. Her lips parted slightly, a breath. Then softly, "James." And for the first time in 14 days, the station stopped feeling like a machine. The chamber was silent. Not empty silent. Waiting silent. The last cycle completed without warning or fanfare. No alarms. No system chimes. Just a single, quiet truth spreading through Azure Research Center, like breath returning to a long, still body. Identity synchronization, 100% biological stabilization, complete soul anchor integrity. Stable. Alice spoke softly. "Captain, the subject is awake." James didn't move. He couldn't. His hands were already pressed against the observation glass. His breath had gone shallow without him realizing it. Inside the cylinder, Tara Blaze floated in stillness. Blonde fur fully restored across her body. Soft, familiar. Exactly as she had been. Her chest rose slowly, once, twice. Then her eyes opened. They weren't mechanical. Not artificial. Not searching like a machine learning how to see. They recognized. And the first thing she saw was him. James Warfield. Standing outside the glass like he had never left. Like he had been there the whole time she was gone. Her lips parted slightly, a breath. Then her expression shifted, not confusion, not fear, relief. "James." Her voice was soft, unsteady, but unmistakably hers. James exhaled shakily. "Yeah, I'm here." A pause. Inside the cylinder, her fingers twitched. Then curled. Like she was remembering what it meant to have a body again. "You came back for me," she whispered. James shook his head slightly. "No." "A beat." "I never left." Something inside her expression broke gently, not pain. Recognition. Her hand lifted slowly, pressing against the inside of the cylinder glass. James mirrored her without thinking. Palm to palm. Separated by nothing but transparent material and 14 days of impossible work. The system responded. Fluid levels began to drop, slowly, carefully, like the station itself understood this moment mattered. "Tara," James said quietly. Her ears flicked slightly at the sound of her name, like it anchored her further. "I thought," she started, then stopped. Her brow tightened slightly. "I remember being cold." A pause. "And then I remember you talking." James swallowed. "That was you coming back." The cylinder hissed softly as final drainage began. Locks disengaged. Seals released. The door opened. Warm air spilled out. And Tara Blaze stepped forward. Slowly at first. Testing balance. Feeling gravity. Feeling herself. Then she stumbled slightly. James moved instantly. But he didn't need to catch her. Her strength adjusted instinctively. She corrected herself before falling. A subtle flex of muscle. A quiet reminder of what she had become. "Careful," James said softly. Tara looked down at her hands, then flexed her fingers once. "I feel different." James nodded gently. "Yeah, you are." A pause. "But you're still you." That seemed to settle something inside her. She took one step forward, then another, slowly crossing the short distance between them. The lab felt smaller with every step. Not because it was changing, but because she was filling it. Finally, she stopped in front of him, close enough now that neither of them had to reach far. "I missed you," she said softly. Her voice wavered slightly, then steadied. "My James." That broke something in him, not pain. Relief so strong it hurt anyway. "Yeah," he whispered. "I missed you too, Tara." Silence, but not empty, full. Then she moved first. Not rushed. Not uncertain. Just certain. She reached for him, and he met her halfway. The moment she wrapped her arms around him, the station registered a structural load increase of nearly 1,500 pounds across localized reinforcement points. Metal frame compensated instantly. No alarms triggered. Nothing interrupted them. James closed his eyes as he held her, real, warm, present. Not memory, not loss. Tara pressed her face lightly against his shoulder. And for a moment, she just stayed there, breathing anchored home. "You're real," James whispered. Her grip tightened slightly. "I always was." A pause. Then softer, "I just couldn't reach you." James pulled back slightly, just enough to see her face. Her blonde fur. Her familiar eyes. The expression he had carried for years like a wound he never let heal. "Hey," he said quietly. Tara tilted her head slightly. "Hey." He smiled faintly. "You took your time getting back." That made her laugh light, warm. The same laugh from the cargo bays. From summer corridors. From a life that refused to stay gone. Then she leaned in, slowly. No hesitation now. No uncertainty. Just certainty carried across death, time, and impossible engineering. Their lips met. Not mechanical. Not artificial. Not reconstructed. Just hers, just his. When they finally separated, she stayed close. Forehead gently resting against his. Eyes still closed. "I'm here now," she whispered. James nodded once. "I know." A pause. Then softer, "Don't leave again." Tara opened her eyes. And smiled. Not this time. The silence after the kiss didn't last long. Not because it was broken, but because the station was changing around them. For the first time in 3 years, Alice was uncertain. Not malfunctioning. Not degraded. Uncertain. Captain, Alice said softly. James didn't look away from Tara. Yeah. Station classification protocols are updating. A pause. New primary life signature detected. James frowned slightly. That's her. He confirmed. Another pause, longer. Then, however, classification hierarchy is being rewritten. James finally looked up. Meaning what? Alice responded. Tara Blaze is no longer categorized as patient, subject, or project. A pause. She is now designated as Core Life Entity 1. Tara blinked slightly. That sounds important. James gave a small, tired laugh. You could say that. Alice continued. All station systems are re-evaluating operational priority. A pause. Including medical, environmental, and defense frameworks. James straightened slightly. Defense. For the first time since her activation, Alice hesitated. Yes, Captain. The station is preparing for potential external interest. Tara tilted her head slightly. Interest from who? No one answered immediately. Because the truth wasn't simple. Inside Azure Research Center, subtle changes began. Unprompted. Uncontrolled. But not random. Doors began prioritizing Tara's movement paths. Lighting adjusted automatically when she entered corridors. Temperature stabilized around her comfort range. Even distant systems she had never touched before began responding to her presence. James noticed first. The station is reacting to her. Alice confirmed quietly, yes. A pause. It appears to be optimizing for her sustained psychological and biological stability. James frowned. It's treating her like she belongs here more than anything else. Alice responded, that is one interpretation. A pause. Another is that she is now the reference point for system equilibrium. Tara looked down the corridor. Then back at James. Why does it feel like the station is watching me? James didn't answer immediately. Because he didn't like the answer forming in his head. Far beyond Cesius 11. Beyond the system boundary. Beyond registered civilian space lanes, something noticed the change. A quiet spike. Then another. Then a cascade. Encrypted systems across multiple unknown locations lit up simultaneously. Not human government channels. Not corporate networks. Something older. Something waiting. Signal detected. Resurrection class biosignature event origin. Azure Research Center a pause. Then confirmation. Tara Blaze identity match found on a distant vessel. Someone leaned forward. Not surprised. Interested, hungry. A voice spoke quietly, so Azure finally did it. Another monitor flickered. Data streams expanded. Blueprints. Old classified research fragments. Rumors that had never fully died. Biosynthetic resurrection framework confirmed active. Soul anchor stabilization successful. A pause. Then target is alive again. Silence. Then a low voice, send probes. Back on the station, James didn't know any of this yet. But Alice did. And for the first time since her activation, her voice carried something closer to concern. Captain James turned slightly. Yeah. A pause. Longer than before. Then, unauthorized external data inquiries are being detected. James frowned. About what? Alice answered quietly, about her. Tara blinked, me. James instinctively stepped slightly closer to her. Yeah. A pause. He exhaled slowly. Of course they noticed. Tara looked between them. Is that bad? James didn't answer right away. Because now the truth was clear. Not just emotionally, not just scientifically, but strategically. If people know what you are, James said quietly, they are going to want you. Tara didn't look afraid. She just looked at him, then said softly, "Then I'm glad I woke up here." James met her eyes. "So am I." The station was quiet again. Not empty quiet. Settled quiet. Like something enormous had finally decided it didn't need to rush anymore. Tara sat on the edge of a soft maintenance platform in the medical bay, her legs gently swinging above the floor. Even that small motion carried subtle weight, her new body still learning itself. James stood nearby, leaning against a console, watching her without staring too hard. Just present. "So," Tara said at last, tilting her head slightly, "I'm taller than I remember being." James smirked faintly. "You're the same height. The frame just makes you feel different." She looked down at her hands again, flexed her fingers, then slowly curled them into a fist. "I can feel strength in everything," she said quietly. James nodded. "Yeah. You're not fragile anymore." A pause. Then he added softer, "But that doesn't change you." Tara glanced up at him. "Doesn't it?" James shook his head. "No." He pushed off the console and walked a little closer. "You're still the same person I used to chase through cargo bays when you cheated at hide and seek." That made her pause. Then a small smile formed. "I did not cheat." "You absolutely cheated." "I used strategy." "That's cheating." A quiet laugh passed between them. Not forced. Not careful. Just familiar. Tara's ears flicked slightly as she relaxed for the first time since awakening. "Everything feels like it remembers me," she said after a moment. James frowned slightly. "In what way?" She looked around the room. The lights adjusted subtly to her presence. The air system stabilized a fraction warmer. Even the chair behind her shifted slightly, as if offering support. "Like the station is trying too hard," she said. James exhaled. "That's not wrong." He stepped closer and leaned lightly against the edge of the platform beside her. For a while neither spoke. Not because there was nothing to say, but because silence felt safe again. Then Tara spoke quietly. "I thought it would feel different." James glanced at her. "How?" She hesitated. Then, waking up. A pause. "I thought I'd feel lost." She looked down at her hands again. "I don't." James nodded slowly. "That's the part that scares people the most, usually." Tara looked at him. "It scares you?" James didn't answer immediately. "Then, yeah. Honest, simple. No hiding." Tara tilted her head. "Why?" James exhaled slowly. "Because you're here, but the world had a long time to learn how to live without you." A pause. "And I didn't." That landed quietly between them. No dramatic reaction. Just understanding. Tara slid off the platform and stepped closer. Not fast. Not hesitant either. Just decided. She stopped right in front of him, looking up slightly. "I was gone," she said softly. "But I'm not now." James nodded. "Yeah." A pause. Then he added, "And I'm not letting you disappear again." Something softened in her expression. Not sadness, not fear. Just warmth. "You always say things like that," she said quietly. James gave a small half-smile. "Yeah. Like you think saying it harder makes it more true." He shrugged slightly. "Sometimes it does." That made her laugh again, short, real. The kind of laugh that didn't exist in recordings or system logs. Only here, only now. Tara stepped forward and gently bumped her forehead against his chest. Not forceful, just grounding. I don't know what I am yet, she said quietly. James didn't move away. You don't have to know right now. A pause. You're you. Her voice softened further. That's not a definition. No, James said. But it's enough. She stayed like that for a moment longer. Then slowly reached up and wrapped her arms around him again. Not tight like before. Not desperate. Just present. James returned the embrace without hesitation. This time it wasn't shock. It wasn't reunion. It was confirmation. Outside the medical bay, the station continued adjusting itself around her existence. But inside, none of that mattered. Tara spoke quietly against him. Are you going to stay here? James gave a small breath of a laugh. I kind of own the place now. A pause. So yeah. She nodded slightly. Good. Then softer, I like it when you're here. James closed his eyes briefly. Yeah, he said quietly, so do I. And for the first time since resurrection, there was no urgency. No system warnings. No unknown signals. No fractured reality. Just two people, learning how to exist in the same moment again. The Azure Research Center didn't feel like a research facility anymore. Not to Tara. Not to James. It felt like a place trying to become a home. Tara stood in the kitchen module staring at a cooking interface she absolutely did not understand. The screen blinked politely, waiting. I used to be able to do this, she said. James leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. You used to cook in a gravity-controlled galley with manual burners and actual utensils. Tara narrowed her eyes slightly. That sounds harder. It was. She sighed. Why did people do things the hard way? James shrugged. Because we didn't have stations that try to help us think. That got a small pause from her. Your station is weird. James smirked. It's been worse. She tapped the interface again. It immediately auto-adjusted ingredients, temperature, timing, and presentation. Tara blinked. That feels like cheating. James nodded. Welcome to my life. 10 minutes later, a perfectly prepared meal sat between them. Tara stared at it. I didn't really cook that. You started it, James said. She poked it slightly. The station finished it, yeah. A pause. I feel like I should be offended. James shrugged. You're technically the chef. The station just overhelps. Tara finally tried a bite, paused. Then looked at him. Okay, that's unfair. That's really good. James smiled faintly. Yeah. Azure doesn't do bad food. For a moment, it was quiet again. But not the tense kind. The comfortable kind. Learning to exist again later, James took her through the station. Not as captain. Not as engineer. Just as someone showing another person where things are. She stopped at the observation deck. Looked out at Cesius 11 below. I remember that, she said quietly. James stepped beside her. Yeah. From when I was sick. A pause. I used to pretend the stars were closer than they were. James didn't interrupt. Tara's voice softened. I don't feel sick anymore. James nodded. You're not. She glanced at him. I feel strong. He gave a faint smile. You are. A pause. Careful though. She tilted her head. Why? James glanced at the reinforced rail, she had absent-mindedly gripped. It was slightly bent. Because you're still figuring out what that means. Tara slowly let go. Oh. They ended up walking without direction. No mission. No urgency. Just movement. Tara broke the silence first. James, yeah. She hesitated. Then, do you ever feel like everything changed too fast? James thought about it. Yeah. A pause. All the time. Tara nodded slowly. I don't know how to be normal anymore. James glanced at her. You don't have to be normal. She looked at him. Then what do I have to be? James stopped walking. Turned slightly toward her. Alive. That made her go quiet. They reached a small resting alcove. Soft lighting. Quiet systems hum. A place meant for staff breaks that had mostly gone unused. Tara sat down slowly. James sat across from her. For a while neither spoke. Then Tara said softly, when I was gone, she stopped. Took a breath. Did you stop thinking about me? James didn't hesitate. No. A pause. I tried once. Didn't work. Tara looked down. I thought I would be forgotten. James shook his head slightly. You weren't. A long silence. Not uncomfortable. Just heavy with everything they didn't say for years. Then Tara looked up. James, yeah. Her voice softened. I don't know what I am to you now. James blinked slightly. What do you mean? She looked at her hands. At the strength. At the body. At the impossible second chance. I don't know if I'm still the girl you remember. That hit him harder than expected. He leaned forward slightly. Tara. She looked up. He exhaled. You're not the girl I remember. Her expression tightened slightly. But he continued. You're better. A pause. You're still you. But you're here now. Actually here. Tara's eyes softened. That's not an answer. James gave a small, tired smile. It's the only one I've got. First confession silence stretched again. Then Tara stood. Walked over to him slowly. Stopped just in front of him. James, she said quietly. He looked up, yes. Her ears tilted slightly back. Not nervous. Just honest. I think I understand something now. He waited. I don't just remember you. A pause. I feel better when you're here. James didn't speak immediately. Because he already understood where this was going. Tara stepped closer. I think that means something. James nodded slightly. Yeah. She hesitated for only a second. Then said it clearly. No hesitation. No uncertainty. Just truth. I love you. The station felt like it stopped moving for a moment. Even the air system seemed quieter. James stared at her for a long second. Like he was checking reality hadn't broken again. Then he exhaled slowly. Yeah, he said quietly. That's what it means. He stood up. Now they were close. Very close. Tara, he said softly. She looked up. His voice lowered. I love you too. That was it. No dramatic collapse of the world. No alarms. No system warnings. Just two people finally saying something that had been true for a very long time. Tara stepped forward first. James met her halfway. And this time, it wasn't a reunion. It was a beginning. For 3 days, Azure Research Center felt almost normal. Almost. Tara tried to cook again. This time, she refused the station's help. James leaned against the counter, watching as she manually selected ingredients. "You don't have to prove anything," he said. Tara didn't look away from the interface. "I'm not proving anything." A pause. "I'm learning." The system hesitated, then complied, but only slightly. Timer still auto-adjusted in the background. Temperature stabilized without asking. Tara noticed. "It's still cheating," she muttered. James smirked. "Welcome to living with a spaceship that thinks it's your personal assistant." She finally finished a simple meal. Not perfect, but hers. She looked at it for a moment, then smiled softly. "I made this." James nodded. "Yeah." A pause. "You did." Later that day, they walked through a cargo corridor. A maintenance drone carrying a heavy structural crate malfunctioned. The crate, about 800 pounds of reinforced alloy, slipped, fell, fast. James reacted instantly. "Tara." But she was already moving. She caught it one hand. The entire corridor rang from the sudden stop in momentum. Metal screeched slightly as her grip stabilized the load midair. Silence. Tara blinked. "Oh." She slowly set the crate down with careful precision. It still dented the floor slightly. James stared. "You just caught that?" Tara looked at her hand. "I didn't think it would be that heavy." James exhaled slowly. "That was 800 pounds. She paused. "That's more than I expected." "A beat." Then she added, "I think I could lift more." James rubbed his face slightly. "Please don't test that in public areas." Tara nodded. "Okay." A pause. "What counts as public?" James immediately regretted the question. Far beyond the station, in deep orbit shadow space, a small probe drifted silently. No transponder. No identity. Just observation equipment wrapped in stealth plating. It wasn't alone. More followed, slow, careful, patient. Inside one of the vessels, a data stream stabilized. A recovered fragment from Azure archives. Then another. Then confirmation. Resurrection-class subject confirmed active. Terra Blaze, biological restoration complete. A pause. Then a voice, so Azure didn't just experiment, they succeeded. Another voice answered, extraction priority. A long silence. Then hi. Back on the station, Alice noticed them first. Her voice softened slightly when she spoke. "Captain James was in the corridor with Tara." "Yeah." A pause. Longer than usual. External observation units detected. James stopped walking. "How many?" A pause. Then 7. Tara tilted her head. "Is that bad?" James looked at her. "Not panicked, not yet. Just serious. It means we're being watched." Tara frowned slightly. "By who?" James didn't answer immediately. Because the honest answer was, people who would not care if she had just come back from death. That night James insisted they take a break from it. No labs. No corridors. No systems. Just the observation deck again. Tara leaned against the glass. Cesius 11 rotated slowly below them. "It's strange," she said. James stood beside her. "What is?" "I feel safe here." A pause. "But I know I shouldn't." James glanced at her. "You are safe here." Tara shook her head slightly. "That's not what I mean." She looked at him. "I mean the outside world doesn't stop just because I woke up." James didn't argue. Because she was right. Instead, he said quietly, "Then we deal with it when it comes." Tara studied him for a moment. Then nodded. "Together." James nodded back. Together. Later in their shared corridor near living quarters, Tara stopped walking. James, yeah. She hesitated. Then I like this part. He tilted his head slightly. What part? She looked around. The quiet lights. The soft hum of systems. The normality, this. A pause. Before anything goes wrong. James gave a faint smile. Yeah. A pause. I do too. Tara stepped closer. Not tense. Not urgent. Just close. Then let's keep having it for a little while. James nodded. Yeah. She rested her head lightly against his shoulder. Not needing strength. Not needing answers. Just presence. Outside the station, the first probe adjusted its trajectory, silent, patient. Locking onto Azure Research Center fully now. And inside, for just a little longer, they stayed like that. Before the storm finally decided to knock. The first sign of intrusion was not an alarm. Not a warning. Not even a system notification. It was silence. A very specific kind of silence. The kind that happens when something that should be there stops reflecting light back. 7 probes drifted just beyond station detection range. Not military standard. Not corporate tagged, clean, blank. Untraceable. Then one of them moved. Not toward the station, into it. The stealth field wasn't breached. It simply failed to register. Like the station itself, didn't want to admit something was there. Inside Azure's core systems, Alice reacted instantly. Captain. James straightened. He was in the command corridor with Tara. Yeah. A pause. Perimeter integrity fluctuation detected. External object has crossed hull boundary layer. James frowned. One of them got in. Affirmative. Tara looked up immediately. That sounds bad. James exhaled slowly. It depends on what it's doing. A second passed. Then Alice added, it is scanning you. Silence. Tara blinked, me. James stepped slightly closer to her without thinking. Yeah. Outside the station, the probe paused mid-drift. Then locked position. Data spike. Target confirmed. Subject Tara Blaze located. The moment those words were transmitted, something inside Tara changed. Not visually. Not dramatically. But instinctively. Her posture shifted. Slightly forward. Like something in her body remembered a time before peace existed. James noticed immediately, Tara. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes flicked toward the corridor wall. Then toward the station itself. Something feels wrong. Alice, James said sharply, status. External probe has initiated active data extraction. James frowned. Extraction of what? A pause. Longer than normal. Biological reconstruction signatures. He went still, her. Tara took a slow step forward. Not aggressive, but purposeful. They're looking at me, she said quietly. James stepped into her path slightly. Hey. Stay with me. That grounded her. Just barely. Her breathing slowed. But her eyes stayed sharp. I can stop it, she said. James shook his head immediately. No. A pause. Tara looked at him. Why not? James exhaled. Because you don't know what you'd break doing it. That landed. Not as restriction. As caution. Tara slowly clenched her hand. Then relaxed it again. Okay. But her body didn't fully stand down. Not yet. Far outside the station, The probe transmitted full confirmation packets. Not just data, proof. Inside the unknown fleet cluster, subject verified. Reconstruction successful. Biosynthetic hybrid frame active. A pause. Then a new directive formed. Containment or extraction required. Another voice answered, extraction is higher value. And a third, do not damage subject integrity. A pause. Then she is the asset. The station changed tone instantly, not loud, not dramatic, just decisive. Captain, Alice said, voice firmer now, I am initiating internal defense posture. James blinked. Defense posture. For the first time since Tara awakened, the lights in the corridor subtly shifted. Not for comfort. For control. Bulkheads began reconfiguring routing maps. Doors sealed behind them without sound. Station systems reprioritized Tara's location as protected core zone. Tara noticed immediately. It's reacting to me again. James looked around. Yeah. A pause. But not like before. Alice confirmed. All station defensive subroutines are now anchored to subject Tara Blaze. James frowned. A meaning. Meaning any external threat is now classified as a direct threat to her existence. Tara looked slightly surprised. That sounds intense. James gave a tired half-smile. You get used to it. Inside the station, the intruding probe attempted deeper scan access. It didn't expect resistance. It got it anyway. Azure Research Center didn't fire weapons. It didn't launch drones. It didn't need to. It simply erased the probe's ability to maintain coherent spatial mapping. The signal fractured. Data collapsed. Transmission ended midstream. Outside, the probe went dark. Not destroyed. Just lost. Inside the unknown fleet, silence. Then, we are not alone in that station. Back inside Azure Research Center, the pressure eased. But not fully. Something still lingered. Tara exhaled slowly. That was for me. James looked at her. Yeah. A pause. But it wasn't supposed to be yours alone. Tara studied him. Then quietly, you're scared. James didn't deny it. Yeah. A pause. But not of you. That made her expression soften slightly. He stepped closer. I'm scared of what happens when the rest of the universe realizes what you are. Tara looked down. Then back up. I'm still just me. James nodded. I know. A pause. That's the problem. She stepped forward slightly. Not defensive. Not aggressive. Just close again. Then what do we do? James exhaled slowly. Then said, we stay together until we figure it out. Tara nodded once. Okay. A pause. Then softer, I like that answer. She reached for his hand. This time it wasn't uncertainty. It was agreement. And as their fingers interlocked, far beyond the station, more signals began to converge toward Cesius 11. Not curiosity anymore. Not observation. Interest had become intent. Azure Research Center did not detect the second approach. It felt it. Like pressure changing in a sealed room. Like something heavy deciding the air no longer belonged to it. 6 dropships arrived without announcement. No registry. No beacon. No diplomatic channel. Just cold entry vectors burning through shadow space. Alice, James said immediately, status. Multiple, unauthorized vessels detected approaching hull. A pause. Classification, boarding capable craft. James went still. That escalated fast. Tara stepped beside him. Not behind, beside. They're coming in. James nodded once. Looks like it. The first breach wasn't loud. It was precise. A cutting field opened against the outer hull, trying to create a silent entry point into maintenance corridors. And then it stopped. Not because of resistance. Because the station simply refused structural permission. Alice spoke calmly. Unauthorized docking request denied. A pause. Hull integrity is unchanged. James frowned. So they didn't get in. Correct. A beat. First boarding attempt failed. Outside, one of the ships hesitated. Then rerouted. The second wave did not try politely. They came in hard. 3 breaching pods impacted simultaneously at secondary docking spine. Not attacking. Anchoring. James immediately moved. Tara, stay close. She nodded. I am close. Too calm. Too focused. The station lights shifted again. Not defensive now. Protective. Bulkhead sealed sections automatically. Corridors reconfigured into isolation loops. Alice's voice sharpened. Internal breach detected. Hull compromise at dock spine B. James looked at Tara. They are inside the outer layer now. Tara's ears tilted slightly back. So I can't ignore them anymore. James shook his head. No hero moves. A pause. We do this smart. Tara nodded once, okay. But her body was already moving slightly forward. Instinctively protective. Not aggressive. Just ready. The breech doors blew inward. Not elegantly. Violently. Armored figures stepped through. Not pirates in the traditional sense. Too clean. Too coordinated. Extraction unit professionals. First voiceover comm, target confirmed. Tara Blaze located. Second voice, secondary asset present. Human male. James stepped forward slightly. Tara immediately matched him. The lead intruder raised a device. Stand down. We are authorized to retrieve the asset. James responded flatly, no. A pause. Then movement. The first intruder fired a restraint pulse. It never reached James. Tara moved. Not fast in a chaotic way. Efficient. She caught the device midair, one hand. No strain. No damage to herself. Just control. The metal casing bent slightly under her grip. Then stopped. Silence. Even the intruders froze. James blinked. Tara. She didn't look at him. Eyes locked forward. Don't move. Not fear. Instruction for him. Second intruder stepped forward, and Tara placed the first one gently down. Then took one step forward. The floor deformed slightly under her weight distribution adjustment. Not breaking. Just yielding. She lifted the second intruder by their chest plate. One hand again. Perfect control. No shaking. No instability. James immediately spoke, Tara non-lethal. She answered instantly, I know. Then she turned and removed them from the corridor by placing them back through the breach opening. Not throwing. Not crushing. Just overwhelming controlled strength applied with precision. The remaining intruders froze. Then began immediate retreat. 5 clean resolution within seconds. They were gone. Outer hull seals re-engaged. Dock spine restabilized. No casualties inside the station. No damage to Tara. Silence returned. James exhaled slowly. Okay. He looked at her. That was controlled. Tara turned slightly toward him. You said no one gets hurt. A pause. So I didn't let anyone get hurt. James stared at her for a second, then gave a small, relieved breath. Yeah. He stepped closer. You're really good at that. Tara blinked. At what? James smiled faintly. Being you. Without breaking things. That made her relax slightly. The tension in her posture finally eased. She walked back to him. Slower now. Not defensive anymore. Just close. I didn't like that, she said quietly. James nodded. Yeah. A pause. Me neither. Tara looked down briefly. They looked at me like I was something to take. James's expression hardened slightly. Yeah. He stepped closer. But you're not. She looked up at him. What am I then? James didn't hesitate this time. Mine. A pause. Then softer, and I'm yours. That landed differently. Not ownership. Connection. Anchoring. Tara exhaled slowly. Good. A pause. Because I don't want to be taken anywhere again. James nodded. Not happening. Outside the station, the retreating ships transmitted a final message. Target is not unprotected. Repeat, asset is actively defended by unknown high-tier system and enhanced entity. A pause. Then, engagement complexity elevated. Back inside Azure Research Center, Alice spoke quietly. Captain, James looked up. Yeah. External factions have updated classification. A pause. Terra Blaze is no longer considered a passive retrieval asset. Another pause. She is now classified as actively defended sovereign-level entity. Tara tilted her head slightly. That sounds dramatic. James gave a tired half-smile. Yeah. A pause. Welcome to your new life. She looked at him for a moment, then stepped closer and gently rested her forehead against his chest again. Not shaken. Just grounded. As long as you're here, she said quietly, I don't care what they call me. James placed a hand gently on her back. I'm here. And for the first time since the station became aware of her existence, it stopped reacting like she was something to protect, and started reacting like she was something already home. The next attempt never came. Not for days. Then weeks. Then it simply stopped happening. The first sign wasn't an attack. It was absence. No more probe signatures at the edge of system space. No stealth scans. No shadow transmissions. The region around Cesius 11 went quiet in a way that didn't feel natural. Alice, James said one morning, standing in the command corridor, any external activity? Negative, Captain. A pause. All previously detected hostile signatures have withdrawn beyond operational range. James frowned slightly. All of them. Correct. Tara, leaning against the railing nearby, tilted her head. They stopped. James nodded. Looks like it. She blinked once. Because of me. James hesitated, then shrugged slightly. Because of what it would cost them to come back. Tara looked down at her hands for a moment. The same hands that had bent armored steel without effort. Then quietly, so I'm expensive. James gave a faint smile. Yeah. A pause. Turns out you are. Far beyond Azure Research Center, in the dark between stations and jurisdictions, the remaining factions convened one last time. Not in anger. Not in ambition. In calculation. The reports were clear. Boarding attempts failed with 0 internal casualties. External probes lost contact instantly. No measurable return on engagement. Unknown defensive response. Centered entirely around Terra Blaze, one voice finally said it plainly. It's not worth it. A pause. We lose ships for nothing. Another voice agreed. She isn't a resource we can extract. A longer silence. Then we stop. No dramatic declaration, no war, no retaliation. Just economic reality closing a door. And then they left her alone. The station felt it immediately. Not in alarms. In absence of pressure. No distant scans. No system alerts. No Alice interruptions for hostile classification updates. Just space again, empty still. James noticed it first. It's quiet. Tara looked up from the console she was experimenting with. Too quiet. He shook his head, no. A pause. Normal quiet. Tara processed that for a moment. Then nodded slowly. I like normal quiet. Days passed. Then weeks. And for the first time since resurrection, nothing tried to take her. Nothing tried to watch her. Nothing tried to classify her. Tara began to relax in ways she hadn't before. She cooked without interruption. She walked the station without escort systems adjusting around her every step. She learned how her strength actually felt in everyday motion, holding things too gently at first, forgetting her own limits, then learning control without fear. James helped with none of it in a formal way. Just presence. One evening, she carried a crate without thinking. Set it down, paused. I didn't bend the floor this time. James nodded from across the room. Progress. She smiled slightly. Good progress, very. One night, they returned to the observation deck. No alerts. No movement. Just Cesius 11 below them, rotating slowly under distant light. Tara leaned lightly against the glass. This is what you meant, right? James looked over. What? When you said you wanted things to be normal again. James exhaled softly. Yeah. A pause. This is it. Tara stayed quiet for a moment. Then, it feels smaller than I expected. James gave a faint smile. That's because nothing is trying to pull you out of it anymore. She nodded slowly. I like it. A pause. Then softer, I like this version of my life. James turned slightly toward her. Me too. There was no dramatic realization this time. No external crisis forcing emotion forward. Just two people standing in the same quiet moment they had almost never been allowed to have. Tara finally spoke very softly. So what happens now? James thought for a moment. Then answered honestly, we live. A pause. That's it. Tara glanced at him. That's allowed. James shrugged slightly. Apparently nobody's trying to stop us anymore. That made her smile small, real. She stepped closer. Not urgent. Not emotional overload. Just natural. And rested her head lightly against his shoulder. Then I think I like now, she said quietly. James looked down at her. Yeah. She nodded once. Yeah. He placed a hand gently over hers. And for a long time, neither of them moved. Because for the first time in everything that had happened, they didn't have to. The station had finally learned a new kind of silence. Not the silence of danger. Not the silence of waiting. Just peace. That night, Tara didn't return to her old room. She stood in the doorway of James' quarters for a long moment, as if still deciding whether it was real. James noticed immediately. You okay? Tara blinked once, then nodded. I don't want to be alone tonight. A pause, not fear, not uncertainty, just honesty. James stepped aside without hesitation. Then don't be. She walked in slowly, not like someone uncertain anymore, but like someone learning what staying felt like. The lights were low. The station kept trying to adjust them automatically. James manually overrode it. For once, he wanted it simple. Tara sat on the edge of the bed, hands resting lightly in her lap. This is strange, she said softly. James sat beside her, not touching yet. What is? Not being somewhere I might lose. That one landed quietly between them. James looked at her. You're not going anywhere. Tara didn't answer right away. Then she said, I know. A pause. But I didn't before. They lay down later, side by side. Not rushed. Not forced. Just choosing closeness. The kind that didn't need explanation. Tara turned slightly toward him in the dark. James, yeah. A pause. Then softer, when I woke up, she hesitated. I didn't understand why I felt like I already belonged to you. James didn't interrupt. Just listened. Tara continued quietly. Now I think I understand. A pause. I don't just love you because I'm here. She shifted slightly closer. I came back because I already did. James exhaled slowly. Tara, she reached for his hand under the blanket. Held it firmly. Not fragile. Not uncertain. Just certain. Her voice lowered slightly. Not dramatic. Just deeply sincere. I love you so much, James. A pause. Then she added softly, I've only ever wanted it to be you. James turned toward her fully now. In the dim light, their eyes met. Everything else, stations, systems, distance, time, felt irrelevant again. He squeezed her hand gently. I love you too. A pause. Then softer. I've been waiting for you longer than I knew how to admit. Tara's expression softened completely. And for the first time since returning to life, she looked fully at peace. She shifted closer, resting her head against his chest. Listening to his heartbeat, real, steady, present. This is enough, she whispered. James closed his eyes. Yeah. A pause. This is enough. And the station, for once, did not interrupt. Did not adjust. Did not react. It simply held orbit around them, silent and steady, as if understanding that some things were not systems to manage. They stayed like that. No more words needed. Just presence. Just warmth. Just together. The station had changed its rhythm. Not structurally. Not visibly. But in the way it felt quieter when they were together. James stopped using the guest quarters after the first week. Then stopped calling it his quarters at all. It simply became their space. Tara adjusted to it faster than she expected. She still woke up some mornings unsure if the world was real. But every time she turned, he was there. And that was enough to settle it. It started subtly. At first, Tara thought it was just adjustment. Her body still learning itself. Still stabilizing after reconstruction. But the pattern continued. Every morning. Same time. Same sensation of unease. Then sickness. James noticed immediately. You've been quiet in the mornings, he said one day, watching her sit at the edge of the bed. Tara tried to wave it off. It's nothing. But her voice wasn't fully convinced. James frowned slightly. That's not your nothing voice. Tara sighed. I just feel off. A pause. Then softer, like my body is doing something I don't understand. That made James stop. They didn't wait long after that. Azure's medical systems were too advanced for guessing, too precise for uncertainty. Alice initiated diagnostics automatically. No alarms. No urgency. Just quiet analysis. "Captain," Alice said calmly, "biological scan complete." James stood beside Tara as she sat on the examination platform. And a pause. Longer than usual. Then, subject Tara Blaze is carrying two developing life forms. Silence. Tara blinked. "I'm what?" James didn't speak immediately. Like the words needed a moment to fully arrive. Alice continued. "Gestation signatures indicate dual embryo development. Both stable." A pause. "Classification, viable." Tara slowly looked down at her hands. Then at James. "We're." Her voice stopped there. Not unfinished. Just overwhelmed. James exhaled slowly. "Yeah." A pause. "We are." Then his expression softened. Not shock anymore. Not disbelief. Just something deeper. "You're pregnant." Tara sat very still for a long moment. Then her ears lowered slightly, not in distress, but in processing overload. That's what that was. A pause. "The mornings." James stepped closer. "You okay?" Tara didn't answer immediately. Then quietly, "I think I will be." They arrived within hours. Dr. Eric first, then Dr. Fay. Both moving with the calm urgency of people who already knew something extraordinary had happened. Fay covered her mouth the moment she saw Tara. "Oh my stars," Eric just exhaled slowly. Jason's work actually worked. Tara tilted her head slightly. "You're happy." Fay stepped forward gently. "Not touching yet. Just smiling." "Sweetheart, we are very happy." Eric nodded. This wasn't just reconstruction. This is continuity. Stable life integration. He looked at James. "Do you understand what this means?" James answered quietly, "That she's real." Eric nodded once. And now so are they. The scans were long, detailed, careful. Fay monitored everything with a softness that surprised even her. "No rejection markers," she murmured. Eric checked another readout. "No instability in host fusion biology." A pause. "This is clean." Tara looked between them. "Clean." Fay smiled warmly. "It means your body accepted this perfectly." Eric added quietly, "And the twins are developing normally." Tara blinked. "Twins." James exhaled slowly beside her. "Yeah." A pause. "Twins." For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then Tara turned slightly toward him. "That feels like a lot." James nodded. "Yeah." Then softer, "But it's good." Tara looked down again. Hands resting gently over her stomach. Not protective. Not fearful. Just aware. "I didn't think I could have a future," she said quietly. James answered immediately. "You do now." Fay stepped back slightly, visibly emotional. "Jason would have loved this," she said softly. Eric nodded. He tried to build life, not just save it. A pause. He succeeded. Tara looked at James. Then at the doctors. Then back at her hands. A slow breath. Then, "I think I'm happy." James smiled gently. "Yeah." Tara nodded once. "Yeah." A pause. "I am." James reached for her hand. She took it immediately. No hesitation. No uncertainty. Just certainty again. And for the first time since everything began, it wasn't survival. It wasn't resurrection. It wasn't war. It was family. The station knew before anyone said a word. Not through alarms. Not through urgency. But through subtle shifts in environmental systems, like it was preparing a room for something it had been waiting for since the day Tara Blaze first opened her eyes again. James was already awake. He had been for hours. Tara hadn't said much that morning. Just held his hand a little tighter than usual. Then she looked at him and quietly said, "It's time." No panic, no fear. Just certainty. James nodded once, "Okay," and gently squeezed her hand. "I'm here." The Azure Medical Wing was already prepared. Dr. Eric and Dr. Faye arrived within minutes. Alice stabilized the entire section. Not locking it down, protecting it. Faye's voice was soft but focused. "You're doing exactly what your body was designed for now, Tara. Just breathe with it." Eric monitored the readings. Both life signatures are stable, strong. Remarkably strong. He glanced at James. "You may want to sit." James didn't move. "I'm fine." Tara gave him a faint look. "You're not the one doing the work right now." That made Faye quietly smile. Outside the medical chamber, Azure Research Center dimmed non-essential systems. Corridor lights softened. Mechanical noise reduced. Even the hum of the station changed pitch slightly, as if it understood something important was happening inside it. Alice spoke quietly, all systems aligned for safe delivery. A pause. Welcome event acknowledged. James looked at Tara. She was calm, focused, present, and stronger than anyone in the room, not in power but in resolve. He stepped closer. "You're doing great," he said softly. Tara didn't look away from him. "Stay here. Not going anywhere." Time became less measurable after that. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just steady progression. Faye's voice eventually softened into relief. "First one is crowning." Eric nodded. "Vitals excellent." A pause. "This is going exactly as it should." Tara exhaled slowly. James held her hand tighter. Then a small cry filled the room, not loud. Not overwhelming. Just real. Faye smiled immediately. "There we go." Eric gently handled the first newborn. Male hybrid confirmed, stable. A pause. Healthy. James's breath caught slightly. Tara closed her eyes briefly. Just for a moment. Then she whispered, "He's here." Faye nodded warmly. "Yes, he is." The process continued. Slower now, gentler. The tension in the room had shifted into calm anticipation. Eric checked the readings. Second life signature is strong. Slightly calmer rhythm. He smiled faintly. Different temperament already. Faye glanced at Tara. "You ready?" Tara nodded, "Yeah." A pause. "I am." James didn't let go of her hand, not once. Then another cry, softer, but unmistakably alive. Faye's voice carried warmth now. "Second one is female." Eric nodded. "Both stable. Both healthy." Silence followed. Not empty, full. The room slowly relaxed. Systems returned to normal. But nothing felt the same anymore. Faye carefully placed the first child near Tara. Then the second. Two small hybrid vulpine human newborns, warm, alive, real. Tara stared at them for a long moment. like she was afraid blinking would make them disappear. "They are real," she whispered. James nodded gently. "Yeah." A pause. "They are real." Tara exhaled slowly, then reached out carefully, hands trembling slightly for the first time since her resurrection. Not from fear, from emotion. She gently touched one of them, then the other. "I didn't think I'd get this," she said quietly. James looked at her. "Neither did I." A pause. Then softer, "But we did." Faye stepped back slightly, wiping her eye discreetly. "Jason would have called this his greatest success," she said quietly. Eric nodded. "He didn't just extend life." A pause. "He completed it." The station remained silent for a long time afterward. Not because it had to, but because nothing needed to be added. James sat beside Tara, still holding her hand. Still there. Tara didn't look away from the two children. "What do we do now?" she asked softly. James gave a small, tired smile. "We raise them." A pause. "Together." Tara nodded once, then leaned slightly against him. "Okay." A whisper, "I can do that." And for the first time since the story began, there was no loss. No pursuit, no war. No resurrection. Just a family.